Yeah, Frank here has got his own billiard room.
Yes, it's what do you call it, Kramer?
Billiard room.
No, not billiard, not the billiards. It was
billiards room.
Come on already. Come on, we call it the
place to be.
The place to be. Yes, the place to be.
Then I shall be there.
Now, it's time. Live and in living color.
The Grandy Man can.
Time to play the game.
Well, you always left me satisfied and smiling, so.
That's what she said.
Why do I want this? I want to make bank, bro. I want to get ass. I want to drive a Range Rover.
Place to be Nation, Scott Criscola and Justin Rosero. This is the Place to Be Podcast.
Very nice, Mr. Crisbola.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dennis.
And then they trash him and say he's a fucking pill-popping, pothead or whatever when he left.
Fuck you, Daddy.
I don't know what the fuck the Department of Health is.
To do worse than Josh Richard.
You will get a sentimental feeling when you hear voices singing, let's be jolly, deck the halls with boughs of holly, rocking around the Christmas tree, have a happy holiday. Everyone dancing merrily in the new old-fashioned way.
Hey Nation, welcome back to another great episode of the one and only Place to Be Podcast. I am your co-host, Justin Rosero, and joining me as always, finally we're back on the air. Scott, welcome in.
JR, it's definitely good to be back. That's for sure. Boy, what a taxing month it has been for both of us. Welcome, everyone, to episode... I'm going to try and guess.
It's been that long?
I know. 179.
Yes, 179.
See, there we go. Of the Place to Be podcast. It has been a very taxing week for me, as most of PTB Nation knows, because they have sent their wishes on Facebook, on the Facebook page, and etc. Yes, a mere, 3.5 weeks after we handled one tragedy in the PTB family. Another one occurred a week ago. My father passed away at the age of 78. He had been sick for a while. So that was tough. I'll get more into it down the line. When we do our year-end in review, we got a lot to talk about in that aspect, and that show will have a lot of special meaning for both JR and I. So I just want to thank everyone for their prayers and their good words. It meant a lot for me this week. It was pretty tough, but my father was not one to sit around and mope and cry. So get back on the horse and continue on with one thing that he was always proud of me doing, which is pretty much getting back on the air. If this was radio job, etc. So it's good to be back. Got to get back in a sense of normalcy, and that means being on with all of you, and of course my partner. So tonight, we're going to talk about an era of wrestling that my dad was not really fond of, or most fans that were that age, of that ilk.
Yeah, and let's, before we get to that, so kind of sets the stage. Hopefully, Scott, that's our last break for those reasons.
Yes, sir. I don't think I could deal with another one.
Yeah, rough month. So, we're going to review tonight the April 13th, 1998 episode of Raw, kind of get us back in the groove leading up to Unforgiven, which we hope to be reviewing tomorrow night for you.
Yep.
The end of this show, we will be announcing the winner of the Jay Wimette DVD contest. So
very excited.
Stay tuned for that. We have a big winner, and we'll read everyone who donated, make sure everyone gets some recognition for helping contribute to Jay. And we have some other stuff for you, kind of business to clear up and take care of as we move on. So, Scott, let's head in. We pre-watched this episode of Raw, so it's not a live review, so we're going to go through our notes, and we'll kind of talk about stuff. And remember now, we're a couple weeks after WrestleMania, and this, Scott, is a very infamous episode of Raw, because this is the one that finally broke Nitro's winning streak in the ratings.
Yes, and just to kind of preface this, WCW was not slumping by any stretch.
No.
The real slump wouldn't occur for probably another 8 or 9 months. But the NWO was still going strong, and they were doing fine. But this was just an episode of Raw that a lot of people just had to turn to. It was something, now the difference was coming in, the change.
And the big thing, too, like you said, WCW's not slumping. They're not really losing viewers. WWF is gaining viewers, and the whole bubble is building. So it's getting even, just the combined viewership is increasing. It's not even just, it's not even just like they're switching over from Nitro. It's just the whole wrestling fandom as a whole was really starting to build. And this ends the 173, I'm sorry, no, wrong week. I'm looking at Bill Goldberg's streak. It is nearly 2 years. I was hoping to find the actual. Do you remember the actual number of weeks?
Do I want to 79?
Well, 2 years would be 104. So it was more than that. I think it's like 83 or something.
Yeah, 83 or 84 straight weeks.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It was a lot. But this is where they're. And I used to enjoy this. It was actually very cool for us as fans. But this is where their Nitro's 11 o'clock encore on TNT kind of came back to bite them in the ass.
Right.
Because nobody cared about the ratings for that. That wasn't a big deal. They didn't care about the West Coast audience. That didn't really faze them. It was that 8 o'clock East Coast crowd they wanted, or 9 o'clock. Had it gone to 3 hours yet? We talked about this, right? It is at 3 hours.
Yeah, right? They started over the... Well, I don't know if they're there... If they did, it was like right around this time.
Yeah, so if they had just started the 8 o'clock hour...
84 weeks, sorry, by the way, is how many weeks
so we're close, all right. The 8 o'clock hour is not that big a deal because they didn't really care. It was the 9 to 11 that they wanted. And this is where now...
Was Raw back to 9 to 11 at this point?
Yeah, yep. Raw is at 9 to 11 now. Yep, definitely. Based on some of my notes here, so... this was a Raw we didn't want to do live because there's just so many awesome promos in it. We didn't want you to be distracted.
Right, there's barely any wrestling, as we'll get to. So,
this is something used to for the next 2.5 years, or not. I wouldn't even say that. The next year and a half of Raws.
Yeah, this is a lot of non-wrestling action. There's just so much to talk about.
Right.
So it looks like I think it was January '98. They went to 3 hours. I'm trying to confirm.
But Raw has been from 9 o'clock for a while now.
Okay.
So yeah,
January 26, '98. They went 3 hours.
Okay, so they've been 3 hours for about 3 months now. Okay. Right. We are live at the Core State Center or the Core State Spectrum in Philadelphia for this Raw.
The last time we've been here for a pay-per-view was Mind Games. We haven't been back since, have we?
Let's see.
I don't think so.
Yeah, Mind Games. No, they weren't in Philly in '97. And of course, they would be in this city the following year for one of the bigger shows. But yeah, this is the first time they've been in. I don't know the first time they've been in Philly, but the last pay-per-view in Philly.
Oh right, right. I'm sure there's been Raw.
Yeah, they've been there for other stuff. But the last pay-per-view to this point was Mind Games in September of '96. So there we go. And actually, there's a new open. You'll be saying that a lot from here on out, boss man. I'll tell you that right now. New open. The new opening, I think, debuted on this episode of Raw.
I didn't even notice when we were watching it.
Yeah, a new opening. Based on JR took some notes, I took some notes, and we're also going to take some notes from a very good writer, online writer who did
one of my favorites. He's one of the reasons I started really wanting to do like our reviews and stuff like that. Is the
infamous Christopher Robin Zimmerman.
Yes, the great. If you guys, if there's anyone out there who somehow isn't aware of CRZ and his writing. Go to slashwrestling.com and all his archives are there. And he was the man outside of our bud Scott Keith. Can you believe that? This is like the Mega Powers Uniting. Scott Keith now part of the PTB Nation, but outside of Scott Keith and Rick Sky and those other guys that were big in the late '90s, early 2000s, CRZ was kind of the innovator. And he started like in the early '90s. He has reviews from like Raw reviews from like '93 and things on his website. Right. And he was always the man, so comprehensive. And that's when I was doing Raw back in like 07, 08, 09. I kind of tried to crib his style of really, play-by-play, but like really explaining the promos and using his kind of I basically stole a lot of his jokes. So he's the man. He's the man. Definitely if I had an online wrestling writer role model, it was CRZ.
Yes. And he's telling us in his notes that there was a new open that night.
Okay.
So
I didn't even notice. Well, it must have been one. Maybe did they finally take Brett out and stuff? Had he been hanging around? Oh, maybe like Sean and stuff was gone already. I don't know.
Maybe, yeah, I'm sure Brett was out of him by then. Maybe they had taken Sean. It's only been what 3 weeks since WrestleMania, so they finally took Sean out of the. Although he wasn't totally out of the picture, but
no,
I guess he was
I'm not sure. So they probably just made the spice it up a little bit. So, all right, so we start with highlights from last week. Vince did his best, and Vince, of course, Vince McMahon, who's now taking an on-air role. We talked about it at Mania, leading into it, and even Kevin Kelly talked about it, how Vince cut the infamous promo saying he didn't want Steve Austin to be champion because he wasn't his type of corporate champion, and he didn't have the respect that Vince wanted from his champ. So he tried to get Steve Austin to conform last week, and he said he could do things, the easy way, the hard way. And classic segment, Austin rebels, wouldn't take the picture or wear the suit that Vince wanted him to wear, and he smacks Vince in the nuts with a little backhand slap. One of the classic moments there. So
yes,
we head inside Philly. I thought the crowd was pretty hot here throughout. Mainly, I'll get into it as we move along. It was mainly a lot of like talking segments. Some of the matches, they really died off. Jim Ross and Michael Cole are in the booth to start the show. No Lawler just yet. Austin out first. Massive pop. And you can just feel a whole new era underway. We always talk about it like after WrestleMania 3, after WrestleMania 6, 10. You kind of feel that switch after those major shows. And where things really shift and you have a whole new feel to the promotion. And to me, you can feel that here with Austin coming out. You agree?
Oh, absolutely. He is the face of the franchise now. He is the face of the product. At the moment, I think it really, Rock really takes his role later on in the year. But right now, he is, the face of the Attitude Era. There's no doubt about it. And other faces add on over the next, 8 or 9 months. But he is the man, and he is the guy that's going to galvanize the company and grab the flag of the WWF and try and steal back the throne from WCW. But yeah, the pops from here for the next, I guess, really, if you want to be realistic, for the next 14 years,
right? Yeah.
But at least for this era where he's active, is just off the charts.
Right.
I mean, he's your champion. He's got the new awesome Attitude Glow belt, which is one of my favorite belts of all time. He's just red hot. And now we all know that he is the guy that the boss does not want to be his champion. So right at the moment, you see the burgeoning of what would become the foundation feud of this era. So yeah.
Right, and it's a whole different feel to the promotion. You had that whole bridge era from after Survivor Series through No Way Out into WrestleMania, and now it's like, okay, we're finally here. Steve Austin's finally ascended. Shawn Michaels is out of the way, out of the picture, and his injury is almost poetic. It's like, I think Austin still would have become the top dog, the alpha male in the promotion, but if Shawn was still kind of lingering around in his way, it almost would have been like they probably would have done a rematch and they would have kept the feud going. I mean, Shawn might have turned face eventually, but they almost needed him to be out for a little bit. I mean, we didn't know he'd be gone as long as he will be, but
right.
I think he needed to be gone for a little while to let Austin kind of step up and do his own thing and make new feuds and start something new, not being involved with Shawn anymore.
Let me ask you something, JR, before we continue on. An interesting question here, and we could talk about this more as we go through the vaults as well. At this point, do you almost feel like Montreal was a waste? Did you think that way, like, oh, Shawn's gone anyway? So, obviously it's a little...
Oh, yeah, at the time...
Like, geez, who cared now? I mean, they're both gone anyway. You know, it's like, did it even matter?
No, looking back, I won't say that because it worked out for the best. But at the time, I definitely felt that way. I was like, well, Shawn's hurt now. Yeah, why didn't they just keep Bret? The Shawn era only lasted, another 4 months, and this is the guy that Vince kept over Bret Hart. So at the time, I definitely felt that way. Yeah. And it reminded me a lot of, like, 91, when Savage lost a career-ending match, and then Warrior only stuck around for a few more months and then left anyway. It always kind of reminded me of that. It's like, well, why the fuck did a Warrior just win? Lose and Savage win if he was going to be gone anyway.
Yeah,
so.
It was so stupid. Exactly. Savage turned face anyway, so it wouldn't even matter that the bad guy won. It wouldn't even have cared.
Right,
he wouldn't know how to do the switch, but yeah.
Okay, so Austin calls out Vince, and he threatens to hold up the show, promises he won't knock him out, he just wants to talk. Finally, McMahon, Patterson, and Briscoe. Of course, this is Pat Patterson and Jerry Briscoe. We had not really seen them on camera too much, just here and there as officials breaking up fights, but now they're kind of positioned as Vince's they're not really in that stooge role yet at this point. They're kind of more just as like confidants and right-hand men while building to this feud a little bit. So they slowly head to the ring, and they're flanked by some security guards, and the great heat on Vince already as he's coming out. He has some awesome royal blue pants on in this episode of Raw, which I dug. Austin demands to know his pay-per-view opponent coming up at Unforgiven, so Vince says he's still undecided, so he still didn't even have a main event, and the show was, 2 weeks away at this point.
Yeah.
So he didn't know who Austin would be defending against. Austin says he isn't Vince's idea of a perfect champion, and he goes over all his reasons why, and then he eggs on Vince and issues a challenge for a title match later in the night. He says you can have an easy way by having a match with me, or a hard way, and that is Austin beating Vince's ass in his own office. Austin makes a throwaway joke about beating Vince with one arm behind his back, and then Vince won't give an answer yet and walks away as we go to break. So Austin's now levied a challenge to Vince McMahon, and this would be Vince McMahon's first match ever if he accepts it. What did you think at this point? I mean, obviously it was a great opening promo. I'm sure you watched this live at the time, or
oh, absolutely, of course I did. Yeah.
Did you think Vince was going to accept? Did you think we were actually going to get the match on this episode of Raw?
No. I was fully expecting some type of. Let's put it this way: I wasn't expecting like a full blown like screw job, which maybe we'd see later on. But I wasn't expecting them to have like a full blown match. I knew something was gonna, because that's money. Unlike WCW, Vince is not stupid. He's gonna make you pay for the big matches. He wasn't that dumb yet. We'd worry about that 10 years down the line. But at this point, you knew he wasn't going to give that match away for nothing. So I had a feeling there was going to be some type of, he would switch up and maybe wrestle Pat or something like that, or maybe one of the other heels. But it was such an exciting promo, and the chemistry. I don't know if they practiced, or I don't know. The two were just melding.
Well, it was a perfect. I mean, not only were they great talkers and great promo guys, they were natural foils, because you had Vince was kind of the stuffy management guy, and someone that you could associate with, because fans that were kind of not in the know all of a sudden have this guy going against their hero, and people in the know, a lot of those people always hated Vince on commentary, and if you knew the real Vince, from the dirt sheets and everything, you thought he was a scumbag anyway. So he kind of had the heel market already cornered. He was kind of being positioned as somewhat of a sympathetic figure at this time, because a lot of people were really starting to turn on WCW and the politics and everything else, and Vince was almost becoming an underdog on the internet and dirt sheets and everything else, and because he was giving young guys a chance, guys that weren't given a shot in WCW, and he'd bring in guys from ECW, and was really made it a point to listen to the fans and deliver what they were asking, and push guys that they were being cheering for and everything else. So he was kind of becoming a fan favorite in a way behind the scenes. But yeah, the chemistry here was undeniable.
Yeah. Well, the problem was at this point, JR, that in WCW, the main event guys weren't wrestling. Their mid card was still better. WCW.
Their mid card was phenomenal.
Yeah. Their mid card WWF's mid card wouldn't get good until we took those. Listen to me. Until WWF took those guys. I know. Until WWF took those guys a year and a half later.
Right.
WWF's mid card would need a lot of tweaking. Main event wise, the main event guys in WWF were just top notch. Whereas in WCW, how often, honestly, other than the occasional big time title defense, never saw Hogan wrestle on Nitro. Hardly ever.
Right, but that was almost better off, because his matches were never that great. But
that's true. And in their defense, they
made it special. And they were coasting, but it made. I mean, you can't deny. I mean, I reviewed that whole year of '97 Nitros, and when he did appear, they built it big time. And when he did have a match, they pumped it through the whole show. So it was a rarity. But even in WWF at this time, though, world title matches were not totally common on Raw. I mean, they didn't. No. The champion would wrestle, but we didn't always get title matches every week or anything like that. So,
right. But even like Hall and Nash not wrestling.
Well, no, they would wrestle, but the problem was a lot of those matches would always end in interference in the NWO and a big brawl with a non-finish. That was the problem. Yeah. Raw will do it too. So let's continue on, because I think we'll see it as we move along.
Yeah.
All right, so we go backstage. Patterson and Briscoe are trying to pump Vince up so he can put an end to Austin's disrespect for good. Briscoe says he needs to break Austin like he's broken everyone else before in the past. So they're really starting to kind of get a little inside here, and really acknowledging that Vince has been the owner, been the man in charge all this time, and that he'll kind of control guys, whereas it's not fixed or anything, but he'll pull the strings as to who, basically make guys conform to the corporate style. And it would have been a nice touch. I don't really recall if they did it at the time. If they should have used Nash as an example at this time. Like, he kind of thrown him under the bus and shit on him a little bit and be like, I broke Kevin Nash. I made him a corporate, pansy. I'm going to do the same to you, kind of thing.
Kind
of a shot at WCW,
Yeah, it would have made perfect sense. Yeah. Absolutely. But I think at this point, I think Vince wanted to just kind of put a bubble around himself and say, look, we're going to do this. We're going to do this our way. We're going to forget about them. We're not going to. We saw what making fun of them did 2 years ago. Did absolutely nothing. Let's just do our thing. Let's forget they even exist. They're going to because at this point Vince realized he already knew what was going on there. I'm sure he was getting some of his little moles and stoolies in Atlanta. I'm sure he was getting a little dirt on the backstage, nonsense going on down there. So he was probably like, you know what? Let them bury themselves. Let's worry about us. Let's worry about our product, our talent, these fans. we can do it ourselves. We can do this. Don't worry about them. Let's not pretend they don't even exist. Let's just let them dig their own grave and finish it. Let us do our thing. So that would have been funny, but at the same time, you don't want to even acknowledge it. Move on from that. So there we go. So next up, the next promo.
Yes.
We need to talk about this because this is new to us. We didn't get into the middle about the new. Let's put it this way: the restructuring of Degeneration
All right,
X.
well, it's not really a promo because we're due for a next match. And it's a continuation of Kevin Kelly's favorite feud of all time, the Gang War. So that's the DOA set up to face Mariquas in a chain match, which I thought was kind of cool. But this is something we'll see now becomes commonplace here in the Attitude Vince Russo era. Stuff that normally would have been built into a big deal isn't really, or a chain tag team or a 6-man chain match would have been a huge build, a huge draw at a time, and now it's like a throwaway 4-minute match that we don't even know was a chain match until it comes out to the ring. So interesting. You can already see that shift in booking style. But
right.
So Jim Ross tells us last week DX disrespected the DOA when they pissed on their motorcycles, and so they come out here to kind of join on commentary and get involved. So Scott, since you are the DX aficionado, sir, why don't you explain to us the whole what went down following WrestleMania?
The night after WrestleMania, out came Triple H, your World Wrestling Federation European Champion, and China. And obviously the night before, he got the job done as he retained his European title, of course, under nefarious means, but he did retain his European title, while his running buddy, the leader of Degeneration X, Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid, a.k.a. The main event, Mr. WrestleMania, quote, dropped the ball. And, of course, lost the World Wrestling
Time to play the game!
That's right. Because tonight, the game doesn't go for another year, but that name anyway. But he pretty much said that Shawn Michaels dropped the ball for DX and, of course, losing the World Wrestling Federation Championship to Stone Cold Steve Austin, and then ran off with his little bad back. So Shawn Michaels left DX, deserted them, disappointed them, and he is gone. So now Triple H has taken the reins, and he is going to restructure DX for the future. And, of course, that includes a couple of guys who kind of were running with them for a little bit. And that was, of course, the New Age Outlaws. But the big announcement comes. He goes, if you want someone tight with you, if you want someone you could trust, you look to the family. You look to the Clique. And he pointed up the ramp, and out came Never really thought that way about this guy, but either way. Outcoming for the first time since early 1996, formerly known as the Lightning Kid, formerly known as the 1-2-3 Kid.
The Cannonball Kid, the Kamikaze Kid.
Yep. And now, of course, formerly
the Kid.
Six.
Yes.
And the Kid. Now
Six-Pac.
the name Six. Yes. And now the name X-Pac. Sean Waltman makes his return to the World Wrestling Federation. Big pop, I remember very much. Very big pop.
Yes.
And now we have the new, restructured, no longer 3-person DX, now 5-person DX. Triple H, the New Age Outlaws, China, and now X-Pac.
Well, the Outlaws, too, had been pretty much hinted at, throughout the winter. They were always kind of aligned with DX. But here, on that night after WrestleMania, they all beat down, like you said, Cactus and Chainsaw Charlie, and they officially joined. X-Pac.
They also, of course, that night, just a reminder, we talked about they retained or got back their World Wrestling Federation Tag Team Championships. Yes. We mentioned at WrestleMania 14, Terry Funk and Cactus Jack won the titles, but of course, it was announced that they put the New Age Outlaws into the wrong dumpster.
Yep.
Yeah, whatever. Since when in the Attitude Era do we go by Federation rules?
It's a garbage extreme dusty finish. Rare one.
The championship committee decided it was the wrong dumpster. So they had a rematch on Raw that night.
Let me tell you what to do now, baby. You're gonna take Terra Funk. You're gonna put him in the wrong casket, and then we're gonna pretend it's a casket, but it's really gonna be a dumpster. So when we come out, we're gonna say, "Oh, you put him in the wrong casket, baby," but it's not a casket; it's a dumpster. So we're gonna fuck with him. It's gonna be a great finish, and not gonna know what happened. And then all of a sudden, the titles are back on you, baby. Now we're good to go.
There you go. Nice skull hat. And, yes, so on that night, the New Age Outlaws regained the World Wrestling Federation Tag Team Championships.
Yeah, so I just want to get back to X-Pac really quick because, you know, we talked about with Kevin how Jeff Jarrett, was kind of the first guy to jump ship and kind of swing that tide a little bit. Mm-hmm. This is the first guy to really come in with a major bang and a major shot fired. He comes out on the live episode of Raw and cuts a scathing promo, ripping on Eric Bischoff, Hulk Hogan, and everything else. And, you know, really, really just kind of sets a tone that they're not going to back down anymore. They're going to go head-to-head with this war. And that really kind of kicked that night after WrestleMania off of the, you know, this is the first time the Raw after Mania became a huge thing, and that would continue to happen as years go on. This is really the first time. I mean, after 13 was kind of a big deal, but this is really the first one where, okay, every year now we're going to expect something monumental to go down, a complete reset, a complete change, and that really happened here with X-Pac returning, and it was a big return, and you know, he was fired because he was injured, so he had a lot of anger built up, and it's very similar to Steve Austin in a way, you know, a lot of piss and vinegar, and he wanted to come home, he wanted to come back, you know, with his boys, and you know, he was just out of favor in WCW. He had to kind of run his course out there, so you know, he'll have some interesting incarnations over the next few years. And I actually remember, Scott, after he made his return, they didn't give him the name X-Pac that night. The night he comes out, the night after WrestleMania on Raw, he just says this guy or whatever, and he comes out and talks, and we don't really know who he is. Well, we know who he is. We don't have a name for him.
We don't have a new name for him, right.
And on WWE.com, there were actually a couple incarnations. First, they actually referred to him as Sean Waltman for a little bit, and then they actually referred to him as the Kid. And that was before X-Pac was coined. So I just remember they had like a little graphic with all the DX members, the new DX, and the Kid was on there. So
yeah.
Anyway, I thought that was interesting.
The key thing, no, that is very interesting. And the other key thing about X-Pac, you were talking about that he was a huge return. Jarrett, when he came back, was his own guy, and he just didn't like WCW. And, you know, Jarrett's reputation in the business is like 50-50. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's not great. It's not garbage, but it's not great. You know, he has his enemies and he has his friends. But X-Pac, or Sean Waltman coming back, is a big deal because he's the first one to loosen the cracks of WCW's power base. Mm-hmm. In other words, you know, I'm sure everyone thought that the whole NWO all loved each other. You know, Hogan, right. Nash, Hall, him, DiBiase, you know, all of, you know, Virgil or, you know, Vincent, whatever. They all were tight. And X-Pac's the first one to come out to the other side and say, no, Hogan's a fucking scumbag. These guys are all a bunch of selfish pricks.
Well, he was still in with Hall and Nash. The problem was that
Hall and Nash,
yeah, he was just hurt, and I think he just, you know, he was just a pain in the ass backstage. I think he just kind of ran his course, and they kind of just let him go. But he, I mean, it was interesting.
He was the first major NWO guy to bolt, and that's what made it so big. Jarrett just left and came back, and now it's Jarrett, whatever. Who had a good run in WCW. He was former U.S. champion, and he was a horseman. But X-Pac was the first real, legitimate NWO guy to leave. That's a big deal, because you thought those guys were probably making all the money, and everything was handed to them. They didn't have to work as much, and it was a great gig. And he came out and said, no, it sucked. So it was a big deal. I thought it was a real big deal.
Oh, it was a huge deal. It was a huge deal.
Yeah.
So, all right. So the match gets underway. DX immediately gets involved on the floor, and they actually use chairs to beat down Chains. And I thought it was a pretty confusing segment. The match continues in the ring. Chains is out on the floor. DX attacking him. Triple H hits him with a pedigree on a chair. Then they do a spike pile driver on a chair. DX charges to the ring. They beat up the rest of the DOA. It's a 6-on-2 beatdown. The bell rings, so there's no finish in a chain match. Kind of just weird. The crowd didn't really know what to do. They were actually kind of quiet, I thought, throughout this. I don't think they had anyone to really get behind, because DX was still positioned as heels. The DOA were faces, but kind of confusing at this point, and the Bariquas were you know, who cares? So the crowd actually starts chanting for the Legion of Doom, who are set to challenge the Outlaws for the straps at the pay-per-view. DOA is wiped out, but DX turns on the Bariquas, ending that partnership. China hits a double low blow on them, and they beat down the Bariquas with some chair shots and pedigrees. And I thought this could have been a pretty hot segment, but just kind of started weird and just was confusing from there. So Chains gets stretchered out. I believe that's it for him. He's gone after this. And then the DX Bariquas partnership is now kind of sealed as well. So,
Yeah, it was very strange. And the gang wars, I mean, Kev, if you want to defend, and we love you, K Squared, if you want to defend it in 97, be my guest. You have every intention to. But at this point, they're just toast. There's nothing left to do here.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm pretty sure this is it for Chains. I don't think he comes back because now the DOA becomes a two-man operation.
Right, exactly. And the Bariquas just kind of, float around. I don't even know. They don't really last that much longer either. So, yeah, this was just a segment to kind of...
Actually, I lied. I'm sorry. Chains is around. Till June. Okay, I was wrong.
Yeah, you said that, and then I'm just trying to think back. I thought he was part of the whole. Well, we'll get into their big feud over the next couple months, but could have sworn he was part of it. So, So this segment was pretty much nothing more than to show and institute DX's dominance as a big faction.
Right, and they almost make him very NWO-ish here. That's what they were. I remember at the time actually being a little bit annoyed. I mean, it was cool, but I remember being a little bit annoyed because it did seem like they were just straight up, all of a sudden out of nowhere, ripping off the NWO. They were doing the spray painting and the antics, and they were becoming... not that the original DX wasn't sophomoric, but I don't know. I think they just became a little goofier at this point. It's funny, and they do some great stuff. I mean, it's great stuff. But the original incarnation seemed more legitimate in their anger, if that makes sense, and more... I don't say serious because they weren't serious. I don't know how to explain it, but now they don't seem as legit to me as like a main event faction.
No, I think they. You know why? Because I think at this moment you're still dealing with some mid card activity, and this is the moment now where Triple H needs to kind of institute himself now, working himself higher up the card. He's not a main eventer by any stretch yet, but I think he needed to really institute himself. As I am in the pecking order. I will get to that moment, but DX was still kind of they admittedly they took a step back. They lost their main event guy, they lost their their flag bearer in Shawn. So now they've kind of been knocked down a bit, and you're like, well, now it's Triple H, and he was
I think they lose some of that cachet, and they lose some of that just legitimate anger. Like some of the stuff they were doing was like serious stuff, and not serious in a different manner, like. Wow, this shit's heavy. That what they're doing. They're talking about the curtain call. They're doing. They're fucking with Vince. They're spray painting racial epitaphs on the Hart Foundation's locker. What I mean, or the Nation's locker room and blaming. There was like some heavy-handed stuff they were doing, and this DX is more like kind of shenanigans. Kind of goofy shit. So I mean, they were both entertaining. They just had different deliveries of that entertainment.
Yes, and so. We got to give DX needs some time, and we'll document it over the next few months, obviously, both on our regular shows and, of course, the Vaults, how DX slowly kind of gets themselves up, and then they get involved in a big-time feud in a couple of months that really sets things on fire. Right. So got to give DX some time. They kind of need to adjust a little bit and get into the new because, with this new Attitude Era and with Shawn leaving, it really I don't want to say throws the roster into flux. It doesn't do that, but what it does is it makes the guys backstage think, all right, well, Shawn's gone now, so we got this big vacuum at the main event spot. We got to kind of refocus here, which might be a reason why we don't have a main event for the pay-per-view yet with 2 weeks left.
Yeah, well, they had a lot of story to tell. They had a lot of. They couldn't just the guy they wanted to use. They couldn't just plug in there. They needed to develop that story. So we'll get to that in a bit. So backstage, Vince's son Shane, who I haven't only seen a couple times, mainly around the Tyson stuff, is trying to stop him from wrestling. Briscoe and Patterson have confidence in Vince to take on Austin, so the four men argue as we go to break. Too Much, who we talked about at WrestleMania, Brian Christopher, Scott Taylor head to the ring for our next bout, but before it can start, Vince McMahon comes out to speak. He says the WWF is his heritage, and he hopes it continues on with his children. The WWF has always been about honor and integrity, and those are qualities that Steve Austin lacks. He says that sometimes a man has to do what a man has to do, and officially accepts Steve Austin's challenge with an oh, hell yeah. Good promo, Scott. I really like this one as well. Vince was concise to the point. JR thinks this is bad news for the company, and he vows to stop this match. He leaves the booth and heads backstage. So we even get JR involved, kind of as the voice of reason here. So as of right now, our main event is set. Vince McMahon versus Steve Austin for the world title.
Yes. A couple of things before we get to that, though. Right after the DX match, Shane McMahon, who we don't see too much of.
Yeah, we just talked about that.
Yeah. Okay. I thought so. Then we move on to...
you listen to the same show that we're doing here?
And then Papa Shango. No, I'm just kidding. By the way, there's a new Stone Cold T-shirt. Buy it.
Okay.
The new Hell Yeah T-shirt. And JR, a little trivia for you. I don't know if you have CRZ in front of you. I hope you don't.
I don't.
Okay. Raw is brought to you by two things. Name them.
Mr. Freeze about no, probably not. Right?
No. Brought to you by the U.S. Army and WWF The Music, Volume 2.
Nice.
Which, by the way, didn't that have Sid's theme on it?
Yes, it did.
Will you stop?
Sorry, Gorilla.
It
Sorry,
was, the Volume 2 was, they were always, like, way behind on these CDs.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Volume 2 had, a lot of guys that weren't around, so.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so too much heads out. Anything else you want to tell us that we already talked about? Just in case you want to refresh.
Well, so Stone Cold comes out to open the show, and no, I'm sorry. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to get my head is still at half speed. Give me some time. But,
I'll give you
all
a
right.
break.
So, anyway, so there you go.
Okay.
U.S. Army, WWF The Music Volume 2, which was a great soundtrack, even though there were like 5 songs on it from guys who had been gone for like 8 months. So, all right. So, what's our next match?
Okay, so Vince leaves, heads backstage. The match is finally about to start, and it's between Too Much, Pantera, and Aguila. Interesting little light heavyweight 4-man action here.
There we go.
But the lights go out, and the Undertaker joins us.
What?
Wild show, Scott. Wild show so far. He grabs a mic and says he's going to show Kane what evil is all about. Kane is now the hunted, and Undertaker is the hunter. Michael Cole informs us that the two brothers will fight in an Inferno match on pay-per-view. Doesn't really get into the specifics, but that is all set for Unforgiven. So a rematch between these two men that fought at WrestleMania. Undertaker demands that Kane shows up. Kane does not show up, but we go to break. So
Dead man.
Yep, he's in the house. Back from commercial, our boy Kevin Kelly's backstage. We get video from earlier of JR trying to change Vince's mind, but Vince will not give in. Shane and JR are against it, but Vince says the match is on. Scott, I thought at this point the build for this match was awesome. I mean, every segment we're getting hammered on it. It felt like such a big deal. Vince McMahon's first ever match in the ring. He's fighting Austin for the title. Guys are trying to stop it. Other guys are trying to keep it going. The build was just so entertaining and so interesting, and everyone just played the part really well. I thought JR was really good here, trying to be the voice of reason.
Yeah, this is where backstage now, because really in '97 there wasn't any, long backstage segments. You go back there for a quick little brawl, or Stone Cold would yell at Gorilla, or we'd have like some crazy camera angles and all this crazy stuff. But other than that, backstage was really not used for much of anything. It was pretty much just
right.
A little bit of small filler. But now, really amping up the backstage skits and the.
And I thought it was interesting because they did it almost like in a hidden camera style, like. The camera was almost like set back in a hallway or something. So They weren't kowtowing to the camera. They were just talking, and it's almost like the camera caught them talking. I thought that was cool, too. It wasn't like a setup thing where they knew the camera was there. So I thought that was pretty neat. So, all right, our next match, we're in the ring. And, Scott, there's one thing we neglected to talk about at WrestleMania. And I think we'll mention it briefly here, and then we'll get into it more when we get to Unforgiven. But Jeff Jarrett takes on Taka Michinoku here. Jeff Jarrett had a little bit of a change of attitude. We saw him in No Way Out. He was still part of the NWA. He was a North American champion, still with Jim Cornette. Things changed over the following weeks. That gimmick slowly faded. I don't know if they just got bored with it or what the hell happened. But he goes back, Scott, to his old 1995 Double J, JARRETT gimmick.
Yep.
And he has a new manager.
He does? What?
Yes, the infamous Tennessee Lee, formerly known as Colonel Rob Parker from WCW, comes out.
Wow.
Of course, one of the greats, I always forget, Jimmy Golden's Bunkhouse Buck. This is Fuller, right? Robert Fuller? Yes, Robert Fuller.
Yep.
Okay. We heard a lot about him from our buddy Downtown Bruno when we had him on.
Yes, Mr. Lauer talked a lot about him.
So yeah, Jarrett back, and I thought this was funny because we're not even like 6 months removed from his scathing promo ripping the shit out of this gimmick and pissing on Vince McMahon for making him wear the gold tooth and all this other shit. And here he is right back out riding a horse with a light up light and everything else. And Tennessee Lee is basically just the huckster here. He's the pitch man trying to get everyone into Jarrett, and they even go back to doing the whole Jarrett singing thing, and he's actually going to sing it Unforgiven, pushing that whole thing again. So it's like we're picking right back up where he left off in '95.
Yeah, and it came away. He had the he had the little. Did he still have the lit up hat?
He had the lit up hat, the lit up sunglasses, the big white.
Why do you think they did that?
I don't know. I was just about to ask you what you thought about it.
Well,
I think they realized the NWA thing was slowly creeping to a slow death. I think they realized no one was really into it. So maybe they figured they'd go back to the well and they could bring in Tennessee Lee to talk to him. I don't know. I really don't know why they did this. It'll be interesting when we have Kevin back on to see what his thoughts were.
Well, if he was going to be a heel, I think the best thing to do would bring him back to a gimmick that was completely sucked, and I think this would work out that he'd get booed even more. The NWA thing, yeah, whether they were using it just to fuck around with the NWA as a whole and just make fun of them, even at that point, if people aren't caring, then there's no real point in even.
Well, it sticks around though because Cornette actually strips Jarrett of the title when he leaves the team and gives it to Wyndham, and then the tag titles and the Rockwell Express and the Midnight Express that we talked about, all these guys stay around. So
right.
Yeah, it's weird. I'm not.
But why move Jarrett? If you're not gonna, I don't know. That was weird.
It was the March 14th. Actually, hang on one sec. Shotgun. He wrestled. I was trying to find the one where he came out as Jarrett. It was a couple weeks before Mania when he came out with Tennessee Lee. I think. It was very random. It was very random.
Yeah. No, it was very strange, and I guess they just realized maybe they wanted to use Jarrett for something a little more substantive, and then let the NWA just kind of peter down even lower down the card, and I guess giving him the North American title was the nicest thing they've done for Barry Windham in 13 years.
Yeah. So on 323, he wrestled a match with Tennessee Lee. I think it was the week before. I want to say it was 316 when he came out back in this gimmick. So yeah, very odd decision. It kind of made him look goofy, I thought. He at least seemed serious when he came back and cut those promos, and he seemed like a big deal, even with the NWA stuff, which was a little goofy. But he still seemed like a big deal. Here, he seems like he's back to being a mid-card goober again. So I thought it was weird. I thought it was a step back for him. I thought it put him firmly back into the mid-card mix, and you can tell because he's already in a feud with Steve Blackman, who really hasn't done much of note since he debuted at the end of the year. So this match starts with a Jarrett attacking Taka. We get a split-screen interview with Steve Blackman. Jarrett had jumped Blackman the week before, and Blackman vows to get revenge soon, and I basically vowed just to possibly show up when Jeff Jarrett makes his singing debut at the pay-per-view. Tennessee Lee joins in commentary as Jarrett works over Taka. JR tells us Taka was attacked by Club Kamikaze on Shotgun Scott. We'll get to them in a second.
Oh, yes.
Because they attack again here and draw the DQ. They wipe Taka out and then run away through the crowd. Jarrett hops back in, hooks on the figure four. And I will say this show is loaded with angle development. So Club Kamikaze is consisted of three men who over in Japan were actually aligned with Taka, part of his promotion. And they were signed on here by the WWF, and they are comprised of, do you remember who?
Dick Togo.
Yes, Dick Togo.
Dick Togo. What the fuck are the other two guys? Oh, Funaki.
Yep, Sho Funaki.
Sho Funaki. I can't remember the third guy.
Men's Teo.
Men's Teo. Yes, Men's Teo. He was the one with the blondish dyed hair. That's right.
Right. So they were actually known as Kai and Tai DX in or Kai and Tai Deluxe, shortened to Kai and Tai DX. Pretty funny, right? Over in Japan, so when Taka jumped over, they followed suit. And they showed up on the March 30th Raw. They made their first appearance. They would drop the name DX. It was just originally known as Club Kamikaze, but then they would be changed over to Kai and Tai in the coming weeks. So the three men basically just wearing street clothes, and they attacked Taka, beat him down, and escaped through the crowd. So it looks like we have Taka's next feud over the lightweight title lined up for us.
Yes, and he was still cranking along.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everything was fine. Although we get to the point now over the next couple months, though, where it seems like he starts to waver a little bit.
Yeah, well, he'll be involved in this feud for a while. We'll chronicle that as we go along. But it was good to see him, like I said, angle development everywhere, and that's one of the hallmarks of this era. Everyone has a gimmick. Everyone has an angle going on. You may get annoyed that not every match gets to a finish or has time. Every match seems to end in a DQ or some kind of angle. But in a way, it was interesting, especially going back and watching this. And it was cool seeing all this stuff kind of unfold and develop because you remember a lot of these characters and angles, but you don't see them, or you don't remember a lot of these little particulars. You know what I mean? So it was cool that even these guys in the lower mid card had an angle going on. It wasn't just match after match after match.
No, well, at this point, they kind of needed a retcon a little bit and get some stuff reestablished. So. Yeah. The matches are kind of secondaries to get guys in some new slots. So.
All right. So we chat with Austin, says he isn't surprised that Vince accepted the challenge because he didn't really give Vince much of a choice because he said he'd beat his ass if he didn't accept. Back from break, and to me, we get one of my all-time great segments. Briscoe and Patterson are training Vince in the back, and they show him how to counter the stunner by using a leg whip, old like heel hook or something like that. And
yes.
It was just great stuff with Briscoe and Patterson trying to school Vince on some wrestling moves before his match. So, some random rap music fires up, Scott. I was kind of caught off guard because I had no idea who this was coming out, and it was Farouk, newly turned face after he turned on Rocky Maivia. Or actually, it was the other way around because the Nation attacked him last week. His ribs are now taped up. We saw Farouk kind of fuck with Rock at WrestleMania. If you remember, he left him to tap out to Shamrock's ankle lock. He wouldn't save him. So Rock officially took control of the Nation. He's now the main guy, now the top dog in the Nation. Farouk is the face on the outside looking in. He says he has a cracked rib, but that won't stop him. He says, please, no, a rib won't stop me. He gives the Nation the chance of a lifetime by calling them out to fight because he's one man against four, and he's already beaten up. On cue, the Nation heads out. Rock's confidence and delivery is already impeccable at this point, Scott. This promo was fantastic. He had the cadence down. He had the confidence, the arrogance down, and he really developed so much over these weeks. Not just since turning heel, but even since the beginning of the year, where he really started to usurp control of the Nation. He says he's going to lay the smackdown on Farouk. After Rock's done, Farouk raises his fist, and the Nation laughs, thinking, well, we're not with you, Farouk. We're not going to raise our fist. But that's because Steve Blackman and Ken Shamrock show up, and they stand behind the Nation and raise their fists up and attack the Nation. A big brawler erupts at ringside, and it rages on until the officials break things up. Good heat on the Rock here. Another wild segment, and it looks like Farouk has a little alliance that he's built up with Blackman and Shamrock taking on the Nation. Do you think this is a good use of those guys?
Absolutely. Yeah. You had to give the Nation, how do I word it? They survived the gang wars, but you want to keep them relevant because these guys are the ones that actually have the talent, so they were smart to keep them around. But Shamrock and these guys, absolutely. The feud with Rock's not over. I think it was fine. It'd keep these guys going, and you need to start using some of these other guys in the Nation. So,
right.
Yeah. So, worked out fine for me. Worked out fine. And as for Rock, I'm telling you, man, he just has it.
Oh yeah, it's clear.
It didn't take him long. It didn't take him long. Again, he's got the we said it with K squared last week, or the week before. He just has the U. He had the U swagger. He's just taking it out of the football realm and putting it into the wrestling realm.
Yep, and it was a great move having him become the leader of the Nation. It needed to happen. Farouk was just holding him back at this point, and Farouk could be kind of bumped around wherever, and didn't matter. Rock was the future, not Farouk. No,
Farouk was on his last legs. I mean, he was, Rock was the younger, more vibrant guy.
Well, not even on his last legs. I think he's still serviceable. The problem is he's not somebody going to build around for the future. So he's here to be used at a lower level like Vader and the Legion of Doom. Put guys over and be used in feuds as a name guy that could help be utilized to help get some guys over. He wasn't going to be anyone they were going to focus on.
No, Rock is the future, is the next future guy. It's going in pieces now. It took them time to establish Austin, and now he's the man. Their next project is establishing The Rock. He's the next guy that they need to, because they know he's the other piece of the future. So
yep.
Austin was set. He was done. He could do his thing now. He's on his own. He could do his own thing. Rock is the next project now to kind of help mold and grow into the next stud top flight guy. So works perfectly. Just so awesome. Such an annoying pain in the ass. Just such a pain in the neck. And it worked out great. Shamrock, good use of him. You got to use these Nation guys. Again, another example of this whole show of just reestablishing the roster right now and getting things set. So it works fine. Works fine for me.
I didn't think I get to play this song again, Scott. My boys, the Quebecers, popped back up again here, taking on a unique team. Jerry Lawler now joins us in the booth to kick off the second hour. Terry Funk comes out, says Cactus Jack quit on him last week, which we'll get to in a bit. So he has a new partner. Says Funk will never quit. He brings out a new hardcore partner, and that man's always been hardcore, but he's never been given a chance by Vince McMahon. He's been held down. And out comes Flash Funk. The Funk Brothers, united. The crowd's confused, I thought, which is kind of surprising since they're in Philly, so you'd think they'd kind of get the connection right away. So they seem kind of out of it. Quebecers attack. The match is on. The crowd gets into it as we go along, start chanting ECW. Quebecers work Terry over. We get more talk about Vince and Austin. JR starts calling Funk by his Scorpio name, which I thought was interesting. of course, formerly known as Too Cold Scorpio in WCW and ECW.
Yes.
He comes in hot, but Pierre turns the table. Quebecers look pretty good here, actually. I thought this is the best they looked since their return. I mean, they looked like shit in No Way Out and up and down a Raw other than that. And then, of course, they didn't really do much of that Battle Royal Mania. There's actually an interesting sign in the crowd, Scott. I don't know if you noticed this, but a sign that said, "Who's Goldberg blowing?" So I can't believe that made camera. Would that ever make camera today? I don't.
Absolutely not.
Right? It wouldn't even make it in the fucking building today.
No, the guy would have gotten frisked, beaten up, and thrown through a window. No, absolutely
Who's
not. But back
Goldberg
then, they didn't
blowing?
if this was the 10 o'clock hour...
Vince probably wrote the sign. Hold this up, goddammit!
Yeah. How about getting blown? That's real good.
All right. Yeah. So, yes, mixed camera. Scorpio hits a 450 splash on Pierre for the win. Nice win for the new team. I thought this was a good change for Scorpio, obviously. I mean, he was doing nothing as Flash Funk, just floating aimlessly. I mean, he hadn't been doing much since his debut, really, in December 96. So this is a great change for him. And being aligned with Funk, you get that little ECW rub, and you kind of make him somebody again. It was another good move by Vince Russo to get someone in the mix that had been kind of forgotten.
Right. Yeah, and actually, we're still in the 9 o'clock hour. I think this is the first. This is the
no. Well, Lawler came out here, so we're pretty much hitting the new hour here.
Yeah, we're in the 10 o'clock hour.
Yeah,
so
just about to hit it.
Yeah, this was the first actual match
right.
of the show. The rest were just story floaters. Yeah, why not? I mean, and I agree with you. For a Philly crowd, boy, they really had their heads up their asses in some aspects of the show. Hello, guys. Duh.
Well, it seems like at this point, they were into Austin, and it was hard for them. They don't get into too much other stuff. But well, actually, coming up here, they get into something quite a bit. So instead of going to break, we're joined immediately by Luna Vachon. JR tells us she'll be taking on Sable in an evening gown match on Unforgiven. She compares the anticipation of Unforgiven to PMS and then calls out Sable. Interesting Luna promo. But actually, that was pretty good. I thought Luna, she was a good talker. She could get it done on the mic, and I thought this was pretty well sold by her. So she calls Sable out, which seems to be a theme tonight. We cut to the break and return with the hour 2 open. So now we're officially into the 10 o'clock hour, into the war zone. So we return, Sable's music hits, but instead of Sable, we get the artist formerly known as Goldust dressed as Sable. Of course, he's got the curly blonde wig and some tight leather suit and heels, and even cuts a funny, quick little promo talking as Sable. Luna takes Goldust down, rips his dress off, and he commentates at the same time, which I thought was pretty good. I thought this was pretty funny overall by these two. Sable finally comes out, tussles with Luna. They rip at each other's clothes. They tear them off as Goldust saves Luna, pulls her to the floor. Sable's tits were out of control here. They were just ginormous. Yeah, I don't know how they weren't slamming her in the face as she was running down the aisle. Yeah. So Goldust carries Luna off, and J.R. Senator D'Amato somewhere was popping Viagra, getting ready for a long night.
Little action.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, my God. Sable was, I was about to say Luna was off the charts. Maybe mentally she was, but Sable was just, wow. She was pretty much the female equivalent of Austin in terms of popularity.
Oh, yes, definitely. Yeah.
She's getting, while the guys are getting pumped to watch their number one guy, they're popping their other things for their number one girl. So
yes.
There's definitely establishing,
mm-hmm.
At this point, the bookers are definitely establishing the personalities that are going to really push them to the mainstream, because now the mainstream is the big story. Now the wrestling audience is set. You've got them hooked back. You've got the diehards back. Now you've got to get the mainstream in and steal the mainstream away from WCW, and that's easy.
Right.
That's easy. Because what would you rather watch in a skimpy outfit? Jay Leno and Karl Malone, or Sable with her bosoms flopping in the breeze?
Yeah, that's one thing WCW was definitely behind on at this point. They had some women, but they weren't really using the sex appeal. So that's something that WWF was kind of smart to bust out with. They cribbed that. They cribbed a lot of this stuff from ECW. So
literally,
yeah, so they literally did bust out with the Sable here. So
I mean, the Nitro dancers. I mean, they were very pretty, and I've always had a thing for Kimberly. She was always one of my favorites. But they were just dressed as dancers. To be creepy here. No, I'm not saying DDP was my favorites, but he was as a wrestler. But no, I mean they were dressed very conservatively for dancers. They weren't falling out of their outfits. I think because TNT and Ted Turner still kind of had that family feel to their show. They weren't totally...
Well, they didn't really need to. I mean, honestly. They didn't need to. They did. WWF did it to try and gain a foothold and be different and unique, and I think they saw the influence into ECW using the women like that. And they saw the society in general was heading that way, too, with a lot of sex symbol stuff. So it made sense, and I thought it was kind of smart for them to have Luna be positioned against Sable, so you kind of knew everyone would be behind Sable here. with Luna against her. Just a natural heel, so well done, I thought. So now we go to our next match, a non-title match with the new Midnight Express, the NWA Tag Team Champions, taking on Ken Shamrock and Steve Blackman. And Scott, we have a special guest, the man who brought the Christmas cookies. Dan Severn is out with Jim Cornette and the Midnight Express, part of...
nice mustache.
Yes. Yeah. He's with Cornette now, part of the NWA territory first. Dan Severn, infamous UFC Ultimate Fighter, MMA guy, big in the early years along with Ken Shamrock. They had a natural feud going on at the time. Referee sends... actually, they have a stare down for Shamrock and Severn. JR just blows a fucking gasket spewing about their UFC history and relationship. The referee sends Severn back to the back and the match starts. Pretty basic stuff here. I thought the Express actually had some nice teamwork. They worked well as a team. JR continues to rant about Vince's decision and claims it'll affect the WWF negatively and it could end the company if he starts wrestling. He also tells us Blackman only has one loss, and that came against Jeff Jarrett a couple weeks ago, thanks to some nefarious means. Midnight Express works over Blackman. Not much competition here, but this is the best match of the night so far, I thought. The crowd's kind of weird, only popping for the promos and brawls and dead for these matches. All four stop brawling. The referee calls for the bell, and it's a double DQ. So it was a fine match with a lame ending. And I thought the Midnight Express actually had... I thought they could have been a pretty good team if they weren't saddled with this gimmick. They seem to work well together and have some decent chemistry.
Well, the problem here, JR, is that the matches are with guys that really the fans are like, oh wow, cool, Midnight Express. You know, there's nobody really juicing. All of the guys they care about are in the skits and in the throwaway matches. The actual matches.
Well, Shamrock was pretty over though when he's in this match, and I just think they were, they were trained now to want to see Austin and this other stuff. God bless them. They were working hard to give these guys angles and issues and gimmicks, but it was going to take some time to really get everyone into them. So, again, here, yes, they're kind of flat. And the matches themselves are no great shakes. I mean, they're serviceable. They're okay, but the ring work wasn't, exactly top-notch at this time.
No, and as we mentioned earlier on, that won't come into play for at least another, 12, 15 months from now, 16 months from now. Right now, we're just dealing with some kind of, I don't want to say, out of shape or not out of shape, over the hill guys or anything like that. Just, right now.
Well, the focus isn't on. I mean, a lot of these guys are still working in older style. And, when you're only getting 2.5 minutes a match, you're not really getting a lot of time to tell the story,
No. And, again, you're dealing with the promos and the guys that people care about. You've already seen DX. You've already seen Austin. We're caring more about McMahon. Well, Briscoe and Patterson, working Vince over to try and make his match big. This is just kind of fodder while they're doing that. People want to see Vince backstage getting ready for his match more than they want to watch these matches. That's the problem right now. And that's an issue, when you talk about the pros and cons of the Attitude Era, and you and I will document this over, several shows. That might be one of the cons of the Attitude Era is that the matches become secondary to the story building. And, again, it would take until at least the end of 99.
But they kind of needed to do that. I think they needed to reestablish. They had such turnover and such new guys in the mix. I think they needed to establish characters and storylines. So I think it was a necessary evil at this point. We'll see as time goes on if they needed to stay that way. But I think right now, it's something they needed to do. So as we go to break, we get more clips of Briscoe and Patterson pumping up Vince. So we come back. Kevin Kelly chats with Vince. And he admits to being nervous, but he's not afraid. He said he wasn't afraid of the U.S. government. Wasn't afraid of Ted Turner, and he wasn't afraid of the Big Bad Wolf, and he's certainly not afraid of Steve Austin.
Absolutely.
Headbangers hit the ring. The lights go out.
Wait, before we do that,
yes,
we do have a promo for In Your House Unforgiven live on Sunday, April 26th from, doesn't say here, I think it's Greensboro. Do you remember who sponsored it?
M&M's.
10-10-3-2-1.
Oh Jesus, you still use that, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Now you called me.
It's tough. It's tough to do it though on the rotary phone. But anyway.
Yes.
So of course, pumping up Unforgiven. Even though
Lee Marshall used. Oh no, he used 1-800-COLLECT.
1-800-COLLECT. Yeah, that's the official WCW long distance. 10-10. Then it was 10-10. What 987 or whatever the hell it was. Anyway.
Was Carrot Top involved in the promos yet? I forget. When did he start?
Oh shit! I forgot about that.
He did those ads for a while.
Yeah, he might have been. He
might
not
his
have
fucking page in his Coke dealer.
Exactly. I don't know if he started using it yet, or if that wasn't until '99. But in any event, they are pumping up Unforgiven.
I don't know. She's just acting real funky.
Can he even dial 10-10-3-2-1?
Yes.
Can he even look at the fucking numbers?
He can now, man. He's doing the DDP yoga. He's getting himself into shape.
Oh, God.
I'll have to talk about that on headlines later this week.
Yes. As you mentioned, the Headbangers coming to the ring. Why are they coming to the ring?
What the hell is this shit? Chocolate or something else?
No, it's the Headbangers, Jake.
Yes.
Jesus Christ.
So the Headbangers come out to the ring. The lights go out. Lawler assumes Kane is here, but no. It's once again the Undertaker. Wipes out Mosh and Thrasher. And now the lights go out a second time. And this time Kane and Paul Bearer join us. Paul tells Taker next week on Raw, Taker must face Kane in a cemetery. I thought this was tremendous stuff by Paul Bearer here. He was great at taunting the Undertaker. This fat, roly-poly, sadistic son of a bitch, just taunting this guy. They said they'll leave him in the cemetery and send him back to hell. Kane hits his pyro, and Taker stands tall while the fire lights up around him. So, pretty good stuff here, continuing to build that feud coming out of Mania. And again, we talked about it at Mania, how Kane was supposed to be a temporary gimmick and ends up becoming a major force. So this feud continues another month. Did you think it was good to go to the rematch?
Yeah. No, I don't got a problem with it. The way they told the story on Raw, or at WrestleMania, is that, it took Taker 3 tombstones to beat him, so obviously they felt a little juice left in the Kane character. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, they would have just buried him, and the next night he would have started something else. So, no, I have no problem with the rematch. For storyline purposes, as we talked about at 14, I don't know how much worse or better the match itself could be. I guess it depends on what the gimmick's going to be. Mm-hmm. And which we always obviously talked about, and will be the Inferno. But would that make the match any better? Who knows? Probably not. But we'll wait and see. But I have no problem with the feud extending. They made it. I mean, they wrote it as such at WrestleMania, so I'm fine with it.
All right, we are back from break, and we get a vignette for Val Venus. Rhymes with penis. Ooh. A new character, Sean Morley, came up. One of the first developmental guys that they kind of created themselves and brought up to their system. Of course, he's working out of Canada. We'll get more into him when he makes his pay-per-view debut. But he joins us here. He's, of course, plays a porn star character, and he's casting his newest flick, Lust in Space. And so he just cuts his usual promo, gym style, about keeping your hand on the bat and not taking your eyes off the balls and all that stuff. So
I love some of his quips. The rocket in his pocket.
Yep.
He's going to explode inside the World Wrestling Federation. He'll give it his all, inch by inch.
And ladies! So, Val Venus hitting the scene. He is coming, just so you know.
Unfortunately, he doesn't look like Jim.
Yes, thank you. In the arena, DX joins us again. Owen Hart's out next, cutting a promo from the ramp. He wants to know which DX member will face him. Triple H goes through some of his material and reveals that Billy Gunn will be the one to get the match, after he made the most convincing argument of all the DX members. And God bless Owen. He's so, he's like a lost beacon in the sea of attitude. He's just kind of still doing his little cheesy humor and just seems so innocent out there with everyone else and, his dorky kind of attitude.
Well, he's probably thinking to himself, he's probably at this point thinking to himself, maybe Brett was smart for not being here because I don't think he'd know what the hell to do in this group either. So, I definitely think that Owen was definitely kind of lost in the shuffle. I think the whole Brett stuff had already passed at this point.
No, I don't think he was totally lost in the shuffle. I thought he was more just different. You know what I mean? And I think it was by design. I think this is how he was. It's just funny because he's still out there working like this. He's almost like immune. Like he just kind of ignores these guys being, with his attitude and this anger and everything. And he's just out there doing his, 1988 style humor. So it's just, I don't know. I always found him unique in this mix. So
yeah, no, I agree.
So Billy Gunn takes the match. Before Owen gets in the ring, we're joined by LOD 2000 and Sonny. So Owen won't be alone against DX. We're back from break, and Triple H and X-Pac have actually joined us on commentary. JR wants to know why they acted how they did earlier. DX brags about it. Billy works over Owen in the ring. DX starts bagging on JR, and Lawler, of course, takes delight. And really the focus was on them on commentary. The match itself was pretty basic. Owen makes his comeback, but Chyna distracts him, and Billy knocks him to the floor. Triple H and X-Pac go to attack him, but LOD makes a save. We go to break. Back from break, and the match is still going on. And this is actually, I think, a record for the evening. Longest match for sure. JR tells us we have no more breaks the rest of the night, and we're going on the air right through the end of the show. Billy controls the match, but Owen gets a quick roll-up to steal the win. DX charges, but Owen bails and leaves with the Legion of Doom. And DX, I thought, was really awkward right now. They're acting like real douchebag heels, but I kind of felt like they should be faces. I don't know if that's because I'm using hindsight or because the crowd was kind of into them. It seems like they're kind of in an odd position. Do you agree?
I do agree. I agree because
they're all guys you want to kind of root for with this new style.
Right, exactly. And Sean's gone, and Sean was a douche. So now, Triple H is kind of running things a little differently than Shawn did. Instead of going after fans and the hierarchy, they're sticking strictly to other competitors.
Right. And that was a big part of it. You're right. And also part of it was who they were feuding with. I mean, they're feuding with Bret Hart and then feuding with Steve Austin. I mean, two huge fan favorites. They're not really in that mix anymore.
Exactly. Now they're kind of picking on, like I said, they're picking on mid-carders. They're kind of out of the loop. They're not sure what the hell to do. And it would take a couple months for DX to kind of assert themselves. And then when they get involved in a huge feud, they really know where they stand now. Right now, they're kind of in flux. Like I said, that's the whole point of these couple of months of shows, both pay-per-view and Raw. The roster just kind of reasserting themselves. Shawn leaving was a big, I don't want to say problem, because I think it was actually a good thing. Mm-hmm. You don't want to see anybody get hurt, but from a talent perspective, this was good for them. Now they just needed to kind of readjust. So that's what all of these shows are. It's them just readjusting, finding where guys fit. And DX right now is kind of in a weird spot. They're so big and so over, but you really haven't given them a reason to turn face. Because if we go back to that Raw the night after WrestleMania, Triple H kind of cuts the promo as if Shawn's turned face.
Yeah. And I think that was the plan. I mean, it was to kick Shawn out of the group, and he'd come back eventually, and they'd feud, and that would be it. So I think that was the goal. Right. But I don't know if they anticipated the direction they were going in DX and the fact that they were going to get over like they did. So,
right. So I think that's, again, we keep going back to the same thing, that the roster just right now has not been totally set in stone yet. They're still kind of big guys. They're kind of floating around. You don't know what to do with them, and we're going to have to deal with that for a little while anyway. All
right. So backstage, we see Vince marching out of his dressing room to the ring, flanked by Briscoe, Patterson, and Sergeant Slaughter, still technically commissioner. JR says WWF is not the company that has senior citizens as champions, so this match should not be going on. So nice little pot shot there at WCW, of course.
Yes.
McMahon versus Austin, the build, I thought this has been great all night. Really felt like a huge deal. A lot of buzz in the arena when Vince was coming out. He struts to the ring, and he looks good. No music or anything, of course. Shane comes out. He's still trying to talk Vince out of the match. Austin comes out to another humongous pop. We get a stare down in the ring and the classic shot of the two looking at each other in the center of the ring. Vince smacks Austin across the face, and the crowd is just shocked. I thought that was an awesome first, blow from Vince. It's nothing you would ever expect Vince McMahon to do. Smack Steve Austin across the face. So it was great. Vince grabs a mic and calls us back to earlier in the night when Austin made that comment that he could win with one arm. So he decides to enforce Austin's comment, and they force Austin to tie his right hand behind his back. It takes a minute, but Briscoe finally gets the arm tied, and we are up and running. We get a lot of Vince's gay chant, and Vince plays it up and kind of taunts the crowd a little bit. He keeps stalling and really building the drama. Briscoe gives him a mouthpiece, and the crowd's really getting anxious. And this is great stuff here to stall and build the heat. Right before the match starts, Dude Loves music hits, and he struts down the ramp. He wants to know why can't everyone just get along. Austin and McMahon are confused. Dude says he can bring love to the war zone. And Scott, we're going to pause there for 1 second, go back to the night after WrestleMania when Cactus Jack and Terry Funk lost the tag titles to the New Age Outlaws. They took a hellacious beatdown at the hands of DX, and everyone that night was chanting for Steve Austin to come make the save. The next week, Mick Foley comes out to the ring, sits by himself in a chair, says that, everyone always wanted him to be Cactus Jack. Everyone called for it. He comes back as Cactus Jack, and what do the fans do? They all cheer for Steve Austin instead of him. He was not happy, and he quit the promotion, walked out, said it would be a long time before you see Cactus Jack ever again in the WWF. So we hadn't seen or heard from him after that promo until here, where he comes out as Dude Love. So we don't really know what his intentions are. He still was a face last time we saw him, so we assume maybe he's coming out to help Austin. We don't really know what's going on. So he says he'll bring love to the war zone. He wants to stop the match and use his friendship with Austin to talk him out of it. He states that Vince writes the checks that lets the Dude live his extravagant lifestyle. Dude gets in Vince's face, but Vince shoves him to the mat. Dude kind of snaps, gets up, and goes to give the mandible claw to Vince, but Austin breaks it up. Dude turns and puts the claw on Austin as Vince looks on in shock. The crowd is not happy. Screwed out of the match here. Austin is down. Dude dances. Vince and crew leaves, and the crowd is just booing crazily. Dude keeps assaulting Austin. Vince wants back in the ring, calling out the Dude, but the cronies keep him on the floor. Dude challenges Vince to a fight, but Vince can't get in the ring. Austin tries to fight back, but Dude fights him off, and the brawl continues as the show goes off the air. So a couple things here, Scott. We didn't get the match we thought we were getting, and also we still have no opponent for Steve Austin for the pay-per-view with just one Raw to go. So very, very interesting.
Well, I think we've established who the opponent for Unforgiven.
Well, we don't know for sure. We don't
Might
know for
be.
sure. Yeah.
No, we don't. But this obviously is some type of setup for it.
Right.
Are we disappointed? Yeah. But mind you, these two have only been feuding for a few weeks.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah.
we can't, in hindsight, we can't say that, this feud is going to last for 2 years
Right.
like it really did or whatever. Yeah, I mean, obviously we're not going to say that because nobody knows.
No, we got to look at this two ways. I mean, one, we want to see the match, obviously. But the match, like you said, the feud is just getting started. You couldn't blow it off this soon. I think everyone has to understand that. They're not just going to give this match away on TV like this. And secondly, I wouldn't even call it like a bait and switch because they didn't promise it weeks in advance. They didn't sell tickets based on it. I mean, they announced it earlier in the night. So to me, that can never be considered any kind of bait and switch. I mean, that's just Raw and on TV shows for wrestling. When something like this happens, you have to expect the unexpected. You have to assume that the match may not happen as booked. It's not like they sold shows or sold tickets based on that match being announced.
No, so it's not like what's a good example?
Well, Shawn at No Way Out. I mean, that was a clear bait and switch. They knew he wasn't going to wrestle, and they kept advertising it. So,
and of course, they would do a big bait. We won't mention it now, but they do a big bait and switch with Austin in about a year and a half.
Right.
That really pisses people off. We won't get into that now, but that's a big example of screwing over, and that's when you're paying for.
Right.
This again, there's a lot of posturing and you didn't. I mean, sure, you invested time watching the show, but you didn't pay for it. And smart wrestling fans, not smart quote unquote, but wrestling fans that know the deal are like, this feud obviously needs to percolate a hell of a lot more.
And I think it added some confusion though because we didn't know why Dude Love of all people was involved here. Why not Cactus Jack? Why not Mankind? It was just an odd choice at this moment. We'll get some explanation as we go along. But
right.
Okay, so that wraps up the episode of Raw. What did you think, Scott? You think this is a Raw worthy of breaking the streak?
Kind of. It wasn't great. I'm going to be honest. It wasn't a great episode. What it did do was establish some new feuds. Was getting some stuff in the mid card kind of reshuffled. And again, to me, the whole premise of this episode and of the episodes of Raw from here for the next couple of months is to find a way to fix the hole in the roster left by Shawn leaving. And I think this was one of the better examples of it. So do I think it deserved to beat Nitro? Well, it couldn't have been any worse than what Nitro had on. Nitro, again, was kind of using the same formula every week, long 20-minute Bischoff-Hogan promos, decent mid-card matches, decent tag matches, and then a long, dull main event that ends with a 15-guy schmaz. So at least from that perspective, there was enough here that would have people turn from TNT to USA. So
definitely. I mean, I think the Vince Austin tease is what really probably took people away.
Right.
That would be my guess. So, I mean, I agree with you. There's not a lot of wrestling here, but the angle development and the storylines and the characters were all fantastic. I mean, this is where you can really see things starting to take off. And I watched it in one sitting, and to me, the episode flew by. I really enjoyed going back and watching it. A lot of people say this era doesn't hold up, but I think parts of it do. The wrestling itself doesn't, obviously, but I thought the angles and characters do. So, a solid episode of Raw. I think it sets up Unforgiven nicely. We'll probably rehash a bunch of this stuff when we do Unforgiven this week. But I thought it was cool to revisit. So this is such a pivotal episode of Raw. This is why we chose that episode. So,
yes.
All right, Scott, we've been going pretty strong here in our first episode back. So I think we need a little break. I think we earned it.
Yes. Wow. Of course, we will continue with this dialogue tomorrow night, or our next episode of the Place to Be podcast, where we will do In Your House Unforgiven, the first Unforgiven. But I need a breather. We'll be back momentarily, but first a break because
to do worse than Josh Richer. Time to play the game. Josh Richer.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following. How many pro wrestling news websites do you visit to get your daily news? 3, 4, maybe 5? Do yourself a favor and make that number 1. WrestleChat.net, the only professional wrestling news site that brings you all wrestling news all day long, and is home of the critically acclaimed Still Real to Us podcast, starring former CZW, ROH, and ECW announcer Eric Gargiulo and the champ Jeff Beck. That's WrestleChat.net. WrestleChat, it's where it's at.
So there's WrestleChat.net, indeed, where it's at. Great message board, plenty of news topics to browse, WWE, TNA, Ring of Honor, the Still Real to Us podcast, much, much more. It's the official place for the PTB headlines, and if you click the PTB gnome on the right of the screen, you will head directly to our Podbean page and our full catalog of shows. So check it out, WrestleChat.net, indeed where it's at. Also head to our message board, bigelow34.proboards.com. It's really where PTB began. Our written reviews, the territory wars, so much more. So head to our message board, bigelow34.proboards.com. If you want a one-touch spot for our show, head to Stitcher.com and the Stitcher app for all phones and tablets, iPhones, Droids, whatever you got. Go to Stitcher.com for more details. We also can't forget our good friend Graham Cawthon and the historyofWWE.com. It's the best research site you will ever find. Past ring results, pay-per-view reviews, and so much more. Graham's a good friend of the show. Always help you with what you need. So that's the historyofWWE.com. We can't forget our good friend Jay Wilmette. Continues to battle lymphedema. The guy's a warrior, folks. For a guy who's had so many medical problems, he's always in great spirits when he's on the show. He's one of our dearest friends. There's a great way you can help him out. Medical bills are not cheap, particularly with a very a unique condition like his. So head to our board, bigelow34.proboards.com for more information. We'd also like to welcome our newest sponsor to the program, and that is the Wrestling Forum at twfnews.com. Listen, they're a wrestling forum, they're a blog site, but really they're much more than that. The guys at TWF are looking to create a wrestling media nation by affiliating with as many top-quality blogs, podcasts, and vodcasts as they possibly can. And that includes yours. They're the official forum of WrestleChat.net, and we here at The Place to Be have already joined up to have our podcast featured on there as well. So go check them out and find out what they're doing, what they're about at twfnews.com.
Hello, everybody. This is Bruno Lauer, a.k.a. Harvey Whippleman, a.k.a. Downtown Bruno. I'm on The Place to Be. You're listening to The Place to Be podcast. And I'm going to tell you something right now. If you want to know about our business, our industry, the WWE, our sport, this is The Place to Be. The Place to Be podcast. You know why? Because it's like Mama said, it be that way sometimes.
Josh Richard. Did you do worse than Josh Richard? That's what she said. Could you do worse than? Oh, I'm sorry, Daddy. That's what she said.
All right, we are back, Nation, and I kind of like this new style where it's the old Saturday Night's Main Event style of breaks. You know, we take that last break and come back and wrap up. Or even prime time, they used to do that too.
Yes,
they'd make us stick to the commercial and come back for like 30 seconds. But we're going to do a little bit longer than that because we have some business to take care of. Scott, why don't you start things off for this? You have a new way that you guys can access the PTB podcast. Why don't you tell us about it, Scott?
All right. Well, for those that we've been chatting some time ago, some of you may know that I used to do a separate, actually even before the podcast, way back starting in 2009, I used to do a radio show called The Main Event, and it was on an internet radio station called The Point. GetThePointRadio.com. And JR used to be one of my co-hosts, my good friend Johnny Reckless, who has been chomping at the bit, JR. I got to tell you about that. He's ready to come out of retirement. We got to have him on in the future as well. And we used to do a great wrestling show. It was an hour.
No one honors their retirements anymore in this business.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's like everybody's funk now. Everybody's got to play Desperado by the Eagles. But anyway, it was a great show. But as JR and I mentioned, sometimes internet radio is a little tricky. You know, you got to find what time to be on, and it's it's a little tricky. However, my good friend Mike, whose house I always go to for the pay-per-views, he's the guy that I always mention when I say I'm going to Mike's on Sunday. He now has a radio app, the Point Radio. It is for an iPhone, so unfortunately me in the Android world cannot have it yet. But if you look it up, it's the Point Radio. He says it's both on iTunes in the what is it? The iStore, the
App Store.
Yeah, the App Store. It's The Point Radio. And by the way, the website is still getthepointradio.com. And it's a music station, but he plays all sorts of great music shows. If you're a comic book fan, there's the comic podcast, all sorts of great stuff. But now you can go on there, and through the app, you can now find our podcast archive. We've kind of joined forces, so we're going to start playing we're going to start working on some promos to promote the station as well. So,
yeah, there's a schedule on the website, so you can see when our show airs in the normal rotation.
Yep.
That you can listen to through the app. So it's another way, join Stitcher and the other options to listen, check us out. So we appreciate, of course, all of you checking us out. Another show I wanted to plug, Scott, because we don't really do it enough, and that's our buddy Grant Owens, the Soundbreak Music Eclectic Indie Radio Show. He's really breaking through, Grant Owens. So now the show is Fridays at 8 p.m. on www.kx935.com or on demand at soundcloud.com/wefoundnewmusic. I have listened to a few episodes, and of course, Grant's got a silky smooth voice I always enjoy listening to, and he plays some really interesting tunes as well. So if you're interested in some indie rock, or you just like Grant Owens like we do, you can check him out and support him and share that show with your friends as well. So, all right, Scott, it is time now. Actually, you know what? Wait, no, we're going to build it. We're not going to announce the winner yet.
We're going to do like Vincent Austin.
Yeah, we're going to tease you.
Through the swerve.
Go to, people just fast forward, I guess, but go to Bigelow34.proboards.com. In the Place to Be Podcast discussion forum, we have the 2012 Year-End Awards nomination or voting thread. We have a bunch of categories up there, and I'm going to read them really quick here while we're taking care of this business. And what we want you to do is go to the board and post your votes for these. And on the 1/2/2013 episode of the podcast, we will have Graham Cawthon on, and we're going to review the year that was 2012. We're going to go through all these categories. We're going to give our winners, and then we'll give your winners by tallying the votes up. So we have Wrestler of the Year, and this is, you can do any promotion you want. We'll probably focus mainly North America, WWE, TNA, Ring of Honor. That's just kind of our wheelhouse. So, Wrestler of the Year, Tag Team of the Year, Diva of the Year, Match of the Year. I'm not going to keep saying of the year. We all know. Promotion, Announcer, Pay-Per-View, Best TV Show, Rookie, Most Improved Wrestler, Best Angle, the DVD of the Year, and then we have the negative categories: the Worst Wrestler, Worst Tag Team, Worst Diva, Worst Promotion, Worst Announcer, Worst Pay-Per-View, Worst TV Show, your Guilty Pleasure Gimmick of the Year, and the Worst Angle, and of course the Worst Podcast Host. No, we're not going to really have that, but if you go... yes. Anyway, so if you go there, you can vote on all those categories. We already have a bunch. We have like 7 or 8 that have already contributed. So
good.
We'll tally those up. We'll tally those up. Yeah, everyone get in. This is kind of the voice of the people. Everyone, we were getting feedback that people were interested in this kind of thing. So
it is out there. Our own Taboo Tuesday.
Well, it's kind of like our own, Dave Meltzer, Wrestling Observer. I cribbed a lot from him. So go on there and go ahead and make your voice heard, and we will wrap those up on the 1/2 episode where we do the year in review. So.
Yes. Yep.
All right, Scott, now are you ready?
Yes, now I'm ready.
Okay. We are now going to give the results of the Jay Wemett contest in November. Of course, it was whoever donated the most to Jay throughout the month received 3 prizes. They would get 10 extra DVDs added to their order from Jay. They would get to come on this show and co-host any vintage vault of their choosing. And they would get to choose any show for us to review outside of the pay-per-view catalog. So they could pick whatever, Raw, Nitro, One Night in China, whatever you want us to watch.
Oh, God. Hell Comes to Frogtown?
Yes.
They live.
Okay. We have the honorable mentions, which I'll get to at the end. And then we have 4 guys that were the closest. So I'm going to go in reverse order from 4th place to 1st.
Okay.
The cool thing is, the 3 guys that did not win, but came 2nd, 3rd, 4th, Jay's going to give you each 5 free DVDs for your help. Because you guys really kicked in a lot of money. So, place number 4, the man we just talked about, Soundbreak Radio, Grant Owens, with a $120 donation.
Excellent. Congrats.
Excellent there from Grant.
Good
So,
job,
Grant, you get 5 DVDs. And Jay has asked us to contact each of you to please reach out to him to pick your 5 freebies that he's going to throw in with your order. So, Grant, get a hold of Jay, which I know you guys talk regularly. 3rd place, longtime fan of the show, one of our best friends here, Michael Shoots Vincent. $1.50. I'm sure half of it was porn, but that's cool.
Yep, and it's considerably less than what he usually spends on stuff, so he must think this is a discount. So
yeah, so Michael Vincent, $150, awesome. Thank you, Shoots. Another big supporter of Jay, a big supporter of the show as well. Cool work there. So please get a hold of Jay. He's going to give you 5 extra DVDs to your order as well. In second place, he did 2 separate orders in November. Chad Sisk, $165.
Right,
Checking
Chad.
in second place. Chad, please reach out to Jay. He's going to throw in 5 bonus discs for you as well.
Super.
And in first place, our champion, and I'm probably going to mispronounce his name, so I apologize in advance, Mike Rude. $200 worth of orders from Jay.
Well, how's his last name spelled?
R-U-D-H. Rudd? Rude?
Rudd? It could be Rudd. It might be Rudd.
I'm really sorry, Michael.
Yeah, we're really sorry, Mike. But in any case, that is an outstanding total.
Good job out of you, Mikey. Good job.
Good job, Mikey. All right, excellent. And, of course, Jay will give you 10 extra DVDs.
Yes. So get a hold of him to get your 10 as well. So really cool work. So Michael Rude, $200. Yep. So, Scott, I'm going to read the honorable mentions, and then maybe we can tally up the total.
Before we do that, remember, Mike, because you won, you also will be able to be on a future episode of the Place to Be podcast with us. If we don't already, depending on what it is, it could be a vault that we already have a guest on. If so, pick another one. Yeah,
we'll let you know. You can reach out to us. You can private message us through the Facebook page, Place to Be, and let us know what you would like to come chat about. We already have a few guests lined up, like Scott said, so your first choice may not be available, but you definitely get to join us. You get to pick the vault you want to come on for, and again, you get to choose a show for us to review as well. So
yes, exactly. So, all right, JR, the honorable mentions.
All right, we have Kevin Furlong at $63, Richard Colon at $60, Rob King $40, Mr. Austin Pfaff $60, Todd Weber $30. Kevin Furlong, $63. Chris Murray at $80. David Hall with $30. Michael McDonald at $31. Ben Ivinson at $21. And our good friend Brett Carlson checks in with $52. So you guys are awesome. Jay is in really rough shape right now, and he really appreciates all this help. Really struggling to get those medical bills paid, and I think it was awesome that everyone stepped up and donated what you could. I know it's not easy, especially around this time of year, to give up any amount of money, whether it's $20 or $200. And we raised over $1,000 for Jay this go around. So this is something I think we'll do once every few months. Maybe we'll do it again in the spring, March or April, and help Jay out again. He's running a cool sale too. He's running a holiday sale, so check that out on his page. And Jay's a great guy. We want to hook him up. We got to give props to Jay Arsenio D'Amato as well. He donated a WrestleMania ticket to Jay.
Really?
Yes, he did.
Wow, good for him. Good for him. Will he be near? Do we know where he'll be? Or?
I'm not sure where he'll be. Maybe Jay can. Okay. And I hope that's what happened. I hope I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not outing Mr. D'Amato, and it didn't happen. But I'm pretty sure that's the deal.
Yeah.
And if it's not, who cares? It's only D'Amato.
Yeah.
All right, that's it. I've already said enough that I probably shouldn't have said. So we're gonna wrap up, Scott. It's good to be back in the saddle. This is a good show to kind of get going with again. We'll be back later this week with two shows for you, Nation. We're coming back strong. We're gonna review Unforgiven 1998, continuing our vintage vault trip through time. And then we will be doing the headlines for the first time in, I don't know. It was the night Jerry Lawler had or the week after Lawler had his heart attack. I think it was the last headlines we did.
Pretty much.
So
of course, we will do the weekly NFL predictions, which, of course, means the return of one Kyle Forschetti.
Yes.
We'll come back, talk a little NFL. Boy, the league is really turned topsy-turvy. The Browns are still the best team in the NFL.
Yes, of course. They're picking up steam. We have a lot to talk about. We do, and it's been a while, so we can update you on the prediction contest and everything else. So, all right, that's it for us, Scott. We'll be back later this week with 2 big episodes. Next week, we get some awesome stuff planned as well. So, for Scott Criscolo, I'm Justin Rosero. We are back, and hopefully we're back for good, and hopefully we're back and better than ever.
Can't have any more breaks.
That was terrible. It's all
right.
I'm not, I'm rusty.
Me too.
Rusty!
See ya.
Come on, Russ.
Okay, fellas, get ready. That was very good, Simon.
Naturally.
Very good, Theodore. Alvin, you were a little flat. Watch it, Alvin. Alvin! Very good, boys.
Let's sing it again. Yeah, let's
No, that's enough. Let's not overdo it.
What do you mean overdo it? We want to sing
Now,
it
wait a
again.
minute, boys.
Yeah, Freddie, why can't we sing it
Alvin,
again?
cut that. Now, wait.
Theodore,
Just a minute.